Hoof listeners, what's happening? Welcome in, welcome in. Anthony off tonight, so we brought back a special guest, very special guest, our old pal Sterling. Stirls for the girls.
That's right.
Welcome,
That's right.
welcome back to the Hoof.
Yeah, man. It feels good to be back on the hoof. You know, one of those things that you and I, when it first started, we had many conversations in the basement, over text, and a phone. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, so for our new listeners, Sterling and I actually started the Hoof. Are we on 6 years ago now? 6
Probably
years ago.
7
years ago. So this is like our first podcasting experience. And basically, I'd drive to Sterling's house 40 minutes, when we lived in Colorado, and we just sit at the kitchen table and try to figure out how to podcast. And it was horrible. It came out really bad. Didn't know how the mics worked. They didn't have StreamYard at the time, right? So we're just trying to figure it out kind of the old school way. And, we've been a lot of different networks, kind of grown, learning new technologies. You land with Buffalo Rumblings with your intentional grounding show. We're still carrying the Hoof here with kind of new branding. And we're still at it 6-7 years later. So,
yeah, man, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Anytime I can come in here and which I'm surprised, you don't have me on more often, to be honest.
I know.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah. Don't say that because I'll use it.
Dude, I'm good anytime, bro. Just let me know.
Appreciate that. But yeah, tonight we're going to get into our part 1 of our 7-episode series of making the case. Call it Roster Rescue. And we're going to make the case of why the Bills should draft this position. New position every week for the next 7 weeks. And we're actually going to do receiver twice because I think receiver is the most fun conversation. And it's also what everybody's thinking, right? So we'll do one here at part 1, and part 7 will be receiver. So be on the lookout for that every week. And we're going to kick it off, right? Getting into the receivers. And should be a really fun show. So
dude,
I was thinking
this is a lot of fun just because receivers such a good class, man. There's like so many guys out there that are pretty legit.
Well, I was thinking I was going to use Nike because you go to the Nike outlet, right? And they got a lot of nice stuff there. It's good value, right? But I always think if you went to Oregon to like where the Nike headquarters are and they have like the flag store, they have all the Nike stuff. Anything that Nike makes, you could probably buy there, right?
Right.
And I was thinking, like, if you went to that store, the flagship store, you're going to spend a lot of time in there because there's like super high end Nike stuff. They probably have some good value stuff that's older, right? But you're going to spend a lot of time thinking about like, okay, what should I get here? It's unique. There's a lot of inventory that I don't normally have access to. So really you should get the most out of your dollar you can because you made the trip. I feel like that is this year's draft class at receiver. You're at the flagship store. You have all kinds of options, right? And you just got to find the best value for your budget, right?
Okay.
Our budget's pick 28. So, and I know Brandon Bean, he's all about draft value. I think everybody would agree with that.
I agree with that.
So
yeah.
We're going to spend a lot of time in the store, right?
Absolutely.
All right, let's kick it off here. So Joe Brady's offense, how do you think the offense changes from last year? We had the Ken Dorsey, Brady takes over midseason. Now coming into his own year, his own start, his own offseason. How do you think it's going to change? And I feel like Ken Dorsey, being a former quarterback, being a quarterback coach, I feel like his perspective, let's optimize Josh Allen. Let's get a balanced offense. And let's make Josh Allen's processing better, right? I kind of feel like that was his philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Joe Brady, it feels like, let's draw up some concepts that are modern, creative, and try to confuse the defense and maybe get a big play out of it, right? Does that track with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to project what Joe Brady's offense is going to look like this coming season, just because, when he took over the offense this past season, it was middle of the season, right? but we did see some nuance, some wrinkles in his game where, you know, he likes to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage. He wanted to resurrect the screen game and throwing it to running backs and stuff like that. So, which is really good. I think, you know, moving forward, I think that's what makes the Samuel signing, I think it's a pretty good signing, just because, you know, Samuel's a guy who can work in the underneath. He has really good run after catch ability, but he also has some speed, right? And you pair him with Josh Allen, I mean, could be really, really good. I'm not saying, you know, I'm looking for Emmanuel Sanders type production is what I'm looking for out of him. Now he has the ability, the skill sets are different, right? Emmanuel Sanders is a guy who's an excellent route runner who can create separation. You know, he's a guy that you had to account for. And I think sometimes, you know, towards the end of the season, you know, Gabe Davis being injured or just, you know, 6 of the last 8 games, he didn't catch a pass. You know, I mean, the blocking's good, but you have to have people on the field that you have to account for. And I feel like defenses didn't really have to account for Gabe with his, you know, limited route running ability. Now, in terms of stretching the field, he could do that, but you got to cut your teeth in different ways. And so, what I expect to see from Joe Brady moving forward, I think they should open it up a little more. We see that they've established a run game with James Cook, which is extremely solid and good. I think that's something that you can hang your hat on moving forward. But I think you're going to see more wrinkles of what we've already seen, you know, with the screen game, you know, with these route combinations and 12 personnel, you know, Dawson Knox taking the contract restructure. So I would love for it to get to what LSU had when he was with you know, the Tigers with Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson, those guys.
Kind of a vertical passing game, right?
Vertical passing
using
game,
receiver talent to win matchups.
Yeah.
Right? And they had it, right? I mean, obviously, you're not going to have that kind of talent in Buffalo. But,
yeah,
I mean, back to Gabe Davis real quick, though. You know, he really was kind of quiet last year overall, but really had a bigger role too, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about you got to fill that role, it's like there's a couple different things I have here of what I think Gabe Davis's role was, and let me know if you disagree with any of these. But
okay,
unselfish, good in the run game, right? Not afraid of blocking, throwing a route pick. Saw that a lot. Like, you don't actually make contact in your routes, but just getting in the way of a corner, you know, so you can free up another receiver, right? Saw a lot of that. Even though he wasn't catching passes, you know, that stuff's important.
Yeah.
Straight line speed can win deep, right? I think that's true with Gabe Davis.
Right.
Not going to win with route running necessarily, but definitely straight line speed. I think he had that. One of the big things with him as he can work the sideline, right? He was really good at working the sideline, and we didn't see it all the time. But you go back to those playoff games, one of the wild card games, he's just catching every ball, you know, right on the sideline, feet in bounds. I mean, those are rare skills, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the last one's to find a lane when a play breaks down. I thought he was, you know, after you spend a lot of time with Josh Allen, you get chemistry and you realize, like, okay, the play's never dead with Josh, right? And I thought he was good at finding a lane where Josh could see him when the play broke down. So I think that's stuff you're going to look for if you're looking for a receiver, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great qualities to look for in a receiver. And in this offense, I mean, you know, I know people like to peg receiver X in this offense, and you know, he has to have these things. But man, I just think you need guys that can make plays, and you know, run after catch is a big deal. I mean, when we talk about guys like Keon Coleman, right? You know, people and maybe in our community say that, you know, he's not as good as people say he is, and he's this and that. But one thing he's a playmaker. And, you know, he's a guy that can go up and get the ball. He can go up and snatch it out the air. And we don't have a receiver on our team that really has that ability, right? I mean, Matt Collins, but I mean, come on, like,
yeah, straight line guy, right?
Yeah,
you know, he can snatch a ball, and he's also leadership. You know, that's a lot of him.
Yeah, which are great qualities, but
I
mean, route running is, trust me, I love a receiver that can separate and run, has a diverse route tree. I think that's ideal. But I think we got to be careful. You have to look at the whole wide receiver room, because you have guys like Khalil Shakir. You have a guy like Stephon Diggs for however long we have him. Dalton Kincaid at his position is a really good route runner too. So you don't necessarily you don't have to have a guy that just can to run routes and that's how he wins. I mean, receivers win in different ways. Mike Williams has made a living catching jump balls. You know what I'm saying? And he's not the most dynamic route runner, but I think he's a good receiver.
Right, and that's a good point. I mean, no two receivers are the same.
Right.
And I think a lot of Bills fans this year watch so much receiver film. It's readily available on YouTube. You can find this film now from college. And the more you watch it, the more you realize, like, oh, he looks like this guy, but different, right? And I think that's every receiver. They're all unique in their own way, as is any athlete. But really, focusing on what do they do rather than what they don't do, I think is a good way to look at it, right? What can they bring to the team to contribute,
right?
And not necessarily like, oh, he can, we like him, but he can't do this stuff, because you can always work towards their strengths, right?
Right. Like you look at it like this. If you look at the Trent Sherfield balls that he dropped in the Kansas City game, and you looked at Diggs drop down the sideline with 8 minutes left to play, if I told you, if you say substitute Keon Coleman in those three situations, so Sherfield missed the 2 and then Diggs missed 1 down the field too, how many of those balls does Keon Coleman make? Does he catch? 2 of 3?
At least 1. We'll just go with at least 1 of 2, which is 50%, right? We'll start there. I think I think
it's fair. You give him
70% of those, but yeah.
Any one of those catches, don't you think that kind of moves the needle in that game?
I think it does, because he's a special athlete, right? And that's kind of what you're missing. I mean, winning consistently in a contested situation is what jumps off the tape for me with Keon Coleman. He's contested all the time, right? He's not the fastest guy. He's not the sharpest route runner. There's a corner in his face every time when you go back and watch a lot of the plays, right?
Yeah.
And he wins them often, right? And that's what you really like about him.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's, he played in the ACC, but he did play a lot of SEC talent, and I think, he held his own in those games.
Yeah, and we're not. I mean, and we're not picking on Keon Coleman. I mean, we're speaking very highly of him, but he's just an example. I mean, athleticism, contest. I mean, he has. He can high point the ball. Is the attribute that we're looking at. I like a receiver for the Bills. It could be early or mid or late, but a guy that can just go up and get it with ball skills, right? Can track it downfield. Doesn't necessarily have to have, game-breaking top-end speed, but like can go up and get it. And he's one of those guys.
Yeah, I agree. What about Justin Shorter? Do you think he's a guy that can go up and get it? I mean, we haven't seen him play for the Bills yet, but go back to Florida. He had a lot of snaps in Florida. Played with Anthony Richardson, which you like, right? Another mobile quarterback with a big arm. Do you think he's a guy that can kind of play that contested catch role at the NFL level? I think that remains to be seen. We don't know until he goes out there and does it, right? But I mean, from what you know about him, do you think he could fill that role a little bit?
I'm not going to say he can't, but the odds of him actually fulfilling that role, I think they're slim. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has never really reached his potential. I mean, he was a top wide receiver recruit coming out of high school. Went to Penn State, didn't work out there, finds himself in Florida, and height, weight, speed. He's a big guy, but like, man, it's like there's a lot that takes place. It's not just running a 9 route. Like there's a lot, that takes place at the line of scrimmage of just getting to that spot. And I don't think he has a really diverse release package. It's kind of like what we talk about Isaiah Hodgins. Even though Isaiah Hodgins was a better release package, better route runner than he is, but I just don't feel like Justin Shorter is that guy. Now, players develop, he can get better and so forth, but man, you look at it like this, like the Bills made Gabe Davis wide receiver number 2 and just banked on the fact that, well, we think he can get better based off of his football character, right? And I think they learned a hard lesson. Like, you kind of are who you are. Now, there's a small percentage of guys that can come into the league and take the attributes or the things that they need to work on it and get better at them.
Right,
So
and I think that's a good point because I think one of the problems with, like, being together, continuity for so
mhm,
long or so many years in a row, defenses figure out your weaknesses,
yeah,
right? When you have the same 2 guys lining up 4 or 5 years in a row now,
yep,
um, you start to see tendencies and you start to see what works, right? Really, like the Kansas City game last year, they're playing 2 safeties deep the whole game, and in the second half, they go to cover 1, and they challenge the Bills to
right,
throw it deep,
right,
right? Which doesn't work because they don't think Gabe Davis could beat them. They don't think, um, Diggs could beat them, right? And that ended up being true. I mean, Diggs did beat them, but dropped the ball, but,
right.
they challenged them to do that. So, I don't know if you would've saw that a few years ago, right? I think they kinda noticed that's something they could do because they've played this team so many times, and it's the same receivers and the same weaknesses, right? So, I think you just gotta change it up sometimes too, right?
You got to change it up, and I think this, and some of this falls on the offensive coordinator. It's his job to, based on player skill sets, to put them in the best positions to win. And Brian Daboll did a really good job at that. We have yet to see what our offensive coordinator, if he has the ability to be a fantastic play caller. I think for the Bills to get where they need to go, like, you need a guy that is fantastic at play calling. And right now, I feel like he's okay to good. He has hot hands sometimes, but he lacks the consistency. So I think that's one of the things that needs to improve for this offense. I mean, it's already good. Let's not get crazy here. The offense and Josh Allen is really good, but I think when you lose games in the playoffs, we know the defense have had its struggles in the playoffs. The offense you need the offense to just be the bell cow. And if the offense isn't the bell cow scoring 28, 30 points, how much are you really going to trust that defense to come through in the end? And then it's proven that, no matter how much money you throw at it, it just hasn't lived up yet. So I think that's one of the reasons why we've
Yeah.
seen, them move on from certain players.
Yeah, it makes sense, and, I think what they have is and Kincaid's a big factor too, right?
Mm,
He's gonna take a lot of targets, expect him to get more targets next year, but he had a great rookie season.
yeah.
There's gonna be a jump there, right? So, that takes away targets from the slot position because he's primarily an F tight end, plays out wide. Right, so now you don't need that strong slot receiver, right? Shakir has really emerged in that area as
Right.
well.
Right.
So really, you look around, and you're like, yeah, we know Shakir can play outside at times, but he's really good in the slot position, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now you look around and go, what are our needs? What do we have? I feel like the inside game, slot tight end, is really good, right? Now you need someone who can scare defenses to keep them playing deep, so you can open up opportunities for Kincaid or Shakir and Dawson Knox, right? I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of where they're at. I don't know if there's I mean, Mac Hollins maybe, but who plays that X position as it stands right now? I mean, we definitely added Curtis Samuel to the mix, which is intriguing. His skill set's more similar to Diggs. He's a better route runner, more speed, right? Really savvy receiver. Go back and watch. He's pretty productive. I think 600, 700 yards a year. Not super productive, but he's definitely somebody who can be in that mix. But is he a deep threat? I don't see it. Right. I think the needs are still got to find a deep threat, somebody who can take the top off the defense or at least scare the safety so they keep playing deep and open up opportunities underneath.
Yeah. I mean, Samuel, well, this is where I disagree with you on this. He can do it. He can do it. I think, when has he played with a great quarterback? I think there's some untapped potential there. He has the speed. I mean, this was a 4.3 guy coming out of Ohio State. And I know this because I saw him torch the Wolverines a few times. Um,
Well, he
you
came
know,
out
they
young. He was like 20 when he got drafted, right?
yeah.
He's been in the league a long time. He's
Bro,
27.
I couldn't stand that guy at Ohio State. But he still has that speed. Like, don't let it fool you. Even though he's a 6-year pro, doesn't mean that he can't get it down the field. So he's shown that he could do that. I think he's just a more well-rounded receiver in terms of, like, he can win in different ways. He's not a fantastic or great receiver. I think he's just good. And I think just good to add to that tool room in the wide receiver, I think that's pretty good. So But yeah, he can go down and get, he could break off a route, he could take a 9 route, he could take a post. I mean, those are things he can do, but you got to look at it this way too. Okay, so now you have Stephon Diggs who, takes up a lot of attention, right? You got Dalton Kincaid who he was starting to get a lot of attention. So guys like Curtis Samuel and Shakir, it's time for them to eat now. It's one of the best opportunities now. Now you can go get your stuff, right? So, and if you add another wide receiver to that, man, you're talking about a very special offense that could be, we could be talking about this Bills offense is like the greatest show on turf if they get the right guy.
Yeah, and Diggs is not that young anymore, right? Pushing 30. I don't know what his birthday is, but you got to start thinking about the future as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like Diggs is good. Still, I think still a number one receiver. I think the Bills still think he's a number one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But how much longer is the question? And now we're talking 2 years, 3 years. I mean, what's the lifespan of a receiver these days? You don't see a lot of receivers go past 35 anymore.
No, yeah. I mean, look, I would say Diggs has a good couple years of production left this year, next year. And to be quite honest, I don't know how long he's going to be on the team. I mean, we just don't know. So, I know wide receiver is the position that, I think a lot of us want to get drafted. And I would love for the Bills to get ahead of this. But it also doesn't mean that you have to get, the first round pick has to be wide receiver. I mean, you can accomplish this. I mean, you see each and every year guys in the second, third. I mean, Tank Dell was fourth round, third round wide receiver.
Yeah.
And produced. I mean, there's guys that come out in the second year,
right. Josh Downs comes to mind for Indianapolis, right?
Yeah.
Smaller guy. Like a lot of people were down on him because he is so small, but no, he had a great year.
Yeah. I mean, so, I just think that, Bills fans don't get married to the idea that the Bills have to take a wide receiver in round 1. But if the guy is there, like a guy like Brian Thomas is there, I mean, I would, man, you make that pick real quick. But yeah.
So here's the question. Is it okay to have a receiver with two receivers with the same skill set in the same room, right? We're always talking about, well, Keon Coleman can give us the 50-50 balls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Diggs can give us the route running. I just mentioned we have good slot pieces who can work the middle. Is it okay to load up a receiver room with the same skill set, right?
I mean, it depends on how dynamic that receiver is and how they win and what that production looks like. A great example would be the Rams drafting Puka Nacua in the 5th round. They didn't know what they were getting, but I mean, tell me that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua aren't very similar, not only similar athletes, but similar wide receivers in how they win. I mean, these guys win with route running, great hands. I mean, finding soft spaces and zones. I mean, these guys are really good at that. So if you mean to tell me could I have a Cooper Kupp and a Puka Nacua, I sign up for that any day. Because, if you can't cover them in terms of short, intermediate, I mean, even though they're not the burners, I mean, those guys can get the ball. We've seen them get the ball, down the field, right? Because their craft and their ability to run routes and stack defensive backs, I think is really good. So, I mean, yeah, it's not always that way, and that's probably an anomaly of a situation. But look at the Bills. I mean, when they had Stephon Diggs and the wide receiver core that we've had a few years ago with what's his name? Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, those guys are kind of similar in how they win. So
both good route runners.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
It works. If it works, it works, man. I'll take 2. Give me 2 of them. Yeah. Give me 2 Stephon Diggs. Give me 2 Puka Nacuas, Cooper Kupp.
Right, so
I'll take them.
So when you're looking at the draft, you're not really trying to draft a particular skill set unless you have like a whole bunch of ideas for plays or something like that. If your offensive coordinator's in your ear saying we want to do this type of thing, but we don't have this type of skill set, that's a little different. But if you're just looking at best available, are you looking at the skill set at all? Or are you just simply going, we just need another receiver who can get open?
I think you have to account for all that. I think it's bad scouting, bad player development if you aren't cognizant of how your players win. The Bills definitely need a field stretcher. They do.
Mhm.
And that has been something that's been missing. I mean, when you got these teams playing, too high, who are you afraid of? Because you don't have anybody that's gonna make you really sit back and think, okay, like if we're not careful, if we're not, sounding our assignment, I mean, this player, Brian Thomas he's gonna have a field day. Xavier Worthy is gonna have a field day. So we have to batten down and be safe, right? And so when you do that, okay, well, what happens? Now you open up the middle of the field, right? But let's say if Josh Allen in this offense is hot and he's hitting short intermediate, now you throw a guy like Xavier Worthy out there, or Adonai Mitchell, Malachi Corley, they could take the top off of defense, and now you're screwed. So now you're at every single level, all three levels, and I think that's what you want to be. You want to be able to cut your teeth at all three.
Yeah, I agree. And so I have here 4 types of receivers, right?
Okay.
And this is just, a category for each receiver. So there's big receivers who can win contested situations. Don't have to be big, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's easier if you're bigger, right?
Right.
The Keon Coleman's of the world. Not a lot of speed, but we know they can win in contested situations. Speed
Okay.
receivers who can win with straight line speed, right? Xavier Worthy seems like that player. There's actually a lot of receivers who just can win with speed in this draft, right? And that's not always successful. I think we get caught up in like the 40 time and stuff like that, but um, a lot of receivers that run fast don't make it in the NFL, right?
Right.
There's really just a handful of really good ones. Great route runners who can win with their agility, right? We just touched on that a little while ago. And then one that I think is important for the Bills in particular is route runners who can read a defense in the moment. Cole Beasley is notorious for this, right? He can see that the linebacker's on him and playing inside, so he has the option in his route to run outside, right? And I think the Bills do a lot of that. And that takes, you got to be a savvy football player to have those skills, and I don't think everybody has that. Coming into the NFL, right?
Right.
So there's kind of the football IQ aspect.
Okay.
So I've listed out the receivers in the draft, and we can kind of go through them. And I kind of left off the top 3 guys: Neighbors, Ndunze, Marvin Harrison. Bills have no shot. It is what it is. But I
Okay.
mean, again, we talked about those receiver types, but if you can cross receivers, so if you're big and fast, right, you go early in the draft, right? And the Bills really
Okay.
don't have a shot at them
Right.
when you're at 28. But so really, I think when we look at these players, you can kind of just put 1 or 2 things on them of how they would help the Bills offense as it is right now. Right. So let's
Okay.
start with Brian Thomas Jr. Again, what comes to mind? How do you think he can help the Bills, uh, with his tools or with his skill set?
Man, he's my favorite wide receiver. I mean, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors and Denze, right? But like you talk about speed, size, athleticism. You talk about he's a route runner too. Now he needs some work in terms of um his route running. So he's more of a finesse receiver, but what he does well, he does it really, really good. I mean, you talk about the ability to change team speeds and challenge teams, vertically. I mean, I just think he's just extremely good, and his catch radius and being able to track the ball down the field. That's one of the things that like I think is an underrated quality for him. Like the way he
Yeah, it
tracks the
shows up
ball
a
down the
lot, I
field.
think. Right.
Yeah, the way he could contort his body, kind of like Marvin Harrison does. I mean, Brian Thomas does a really good job of contorting his body and making himself available to catch these passes. Like it's a special thing. So, I mean, he can help the Bills. I mean, you put this guy on the Bills, not only does he give you that down the field threat, but like, man, put this guy on a slant because he's 6'3".
Right. Use the
Like,
body. Right.
yeah, he's
He can
tall.
body up.
Like, yeah, like I mean, that's something that I would love for them to have. So, I mean, he's a guy that I think he can get you at all 3 levels.
Yeah, which is why he's probably not going to be there when the Bills pick, right? Because
Right.
when you have multiple different skill sets, they just tend to go earlier, right? It's what
Hmm.
everyone's looking for because you
He's
can do
probably going to
so
go into
much with
teams,
him in
man.
play calling. Yeah, I agree. But it would be fun if he was a Buffalo Bill. because this
That would be
guy
so
can
nice.
definitely. I mean, I think you bring him in as an X, but again, I think it's a very short period of time before you start talking about him being more than that, right?
Oh yeah, man. Listen, dude. I mean, like watching film of this guy, like the Florida game comes to mind. I mean, he lit them up. He lit Florida up. Uh, he had a really good game against Wisconsin, right? In the bowl game. I thought he played well there. This dude, I mean, Arkansas, like I watched like 6 games of his, and he's just dude, he's just good.
Yeah, it
He's
also
just
helps
good.
when neighbors on the other side and your quarterback's a Heisman winner. It's all there for LSU this year, right?
Oh yeah.
And he really benefited from that. But he's able to show his skill set. And again, playing in the SEC, I mean, he's going against top talent and then making them look silly every week,
So
right? So there's a
here's
lot
a
to like
stat
about
for
him.
him. So this dude had in 4 games last season. I'm trying to recall. I don't know which ones exactly, but you look at yards per reception. He had over 20 yards reception in 4 games last season. Like that just tells you like this dude is a big play hunter, like downfield, man. He's a special player. And I would love for the Bills to have a guy like that. I mean, you put a guy like that in your offense who's going to get, you know, 20 yards of reception in 4 year games. Holy shit. Like what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Brian Thomas is special, man.
Still hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay, yeah.
lost you for a second there.
Yeah. I think you put him in that Sherfield role, and I think that opens up the playbook because now there's some capability there, right? Just put him on the outside every time, and I think he'll keep the safeties deep for sure because he's such a threat deep, right? So there's a lot to like there.
Yeah, and you look at to bring this up, but you look at the Mac Hollins signing. Like Mac Hollins is going to do the Gabe Davis blocking stuff, right? So you're not sacrificing your run game with a receiver like with Brian Thomas because you have a guy Mac Hollins who could do a lot of that stuff. But man, you get another 6'3" receiver in here, dude. I mean, you're talking Kincaid is 6'3", 6'4". Brian Thomas is 6'3". Mac Hollins is 6'4", 6'5". Like them some big boys. You know what I'm saying? So I like it. I like if they start going big on big. That'd be great.
Yeah. Unlikely they'll have a shot at him, but fun to talk about.
Yeah,
All
for
right,
sure.
next guy here, AD Mitchell, Anodyne Mitchell out of Texas, played at Georgia as well. I think the big surprise for him, we knew he's a deep threat type player, right? He comes out and runs a 4.3,
Yeah.
right? And the thing you like about him, just contested catches, and then again being able to adjust his body on deep balls to get the catch, right? That really shows up on the games I watched. Is he's always open deep, contested or not, right? And we
Yeah.
saw that they played Alabama. He had one of his best games against Kool-Aid McChristy. So I think
Yeah.
there's a lot to like here. And again, this guy, I think he was around the early second round for a while, but you start to see him moving up the boards. Again, seems like a guy that probably won't be there for the Bills, if you're asking me, because he does
So
have a huge tool set that teams are going to want.
so there's a reason why, like for me personally, when I was going through my process, like I didn't have AD Mitchell as a first round graded wide receiver. Now I think like when I look at like the play speed on film versus what he ran the combine, I would say that matches up, right? But you look at AD and you're like, I just wish like at 6'4", like I I just wanted more from him. You know what I'm saying? Like I like him. Like I think what he does well is I think he's a guy that at 6'4", is he's size and speed. He can get down the field. He's got a really big catch radius. I like that. He shows good like body discipline in terms of like how he catches the ball near the sideline. I like that. But like I just don't think he's round one worthy. I just don't. I like him. I would love for the Bills to draft him. And he might not be there. And I could be wrong. He could be, teams may value him as a first round receiver, but I just think that like at 6'4", I want you to play like you're 6'4" too. And you don't always see that. It feels like sometimes he plays a little smaller. He should be dominating. I feel like at 6'4" and that speed,
right,
you should be dominating these dudes, man.
right. So
And
you want to see more highlight plays, or you want to see more production?
yeah, and the fact that like in the Big 12, I feel like you see a lot of free releases for AD. So, DBs aren't getting their hands in his chest and stuff like that. Well, in the NFL, these DBs don't care about how fast you are necessarily unless you're Tyreek Hill. So how are you going to be able to beat press coverage? So what's that release package look like? So I think,
Legitimate
again,
question. Yeah.
if he's your number one wide receiver, it could go one of two ways. You can push him into greatness, or he's gonna crumble, because unless he learns the nuances of being a receiver, right? So I like him though. Second round grade for me. But I mean, you talk about he's never rattled in the moment. I mean, he makes big plays. That's what he does, right? So it could be one of those things where, okay, like at Texas, I always try to look at context. What's around him? He had a really good quarterback. He had Bijan Robinson back there. He had all these things around him and players around him. So
right, good.
Could that be a reason why?
Xavier Worthy, right?
Yeah,
track star basically.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, like, but man, like you look at these two receivers who both run a 4.3. Like I feel like that offense should have been better. When you got a really good running back there as well, last year and this year. I feel like the offense should have been better. So I just think there's things that with Steve Sarkisian as your head coach and offensive coordinator, like I don't know, man. So
it had a great year. The team was phenomenal last year.
The team was good,
right?
But don't with what they had on paper. Don't you feel like it could have been better? It could have been better.
Right, and we talk about it all the time. Is they're not done growing when they get to the NFL, right? It almost just starts when you have access to the best equipment, the best coaches, meal plans, like the whole thing, and you don't have to worry about kind of the school piece. You can just do football all the time. It really comes down to your character and like how hard you want to work to be better, right? So
right.
If AD Mitchell's one of those guys that is obsessed with getting better, I think he does have the physical skill set to be a number one receiver, right? The 4.3 speed, like you said, the 6'4" body, right? The vertical threat that he is. I think he could learn. He's not a bad route runner either, right? I think
he's not bad.
There's some routes there. Not the best. I don't think he's known for that, but
he's okay. Right. He's not going to win by running routes. I mean, this guy, last season he only had 300-yard games. It was Kansas State, and I think Oklahoma State. And it's like, man, like, okay, so I saw what he did in the combine versus what I saw on tape, and it's like there should have been more production.
Right.
Should have been more production.
Right. And just didn't show up doesn't mean he can't do it, right?
Right.
And that's the challenge, and right, that's why scouts and teams get it wrong sometimes because you just don't know, right? You can only go what you see. You can't really project the future. But I mean, if you're looking at just skill set, I think AD Mitchell's somebody will fall in love with that. Think they can help him. I think he does squeeze in the first round for me.
Okay, no, that's fair. And you know what, too, is I think another factor, because we don't get to see this, but like when teams meet with these guys, I think that definitely helps them too. Like you kind of get an idea of what the makeup, the character looks like.
If there's somebody I want to work with, right? It matters, right, for sure.
But when you turn on the tape of him, you see sometimes the effort's not all the way there. So I don't know, man. It's one of those things, dude. Like I don't want to take guys for me personally. I don't want to take guys in the first round where they have effort issues.
Fair.
That's
fair.
So that's just me though. Brandon B might think otherwise.
Our buddy John says, I think I read AD had a 3.3 yard separation. In college, that's you should have that separation if you're an NFL talent, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting point.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the next one here. Spent a lot of time on that one. Troy Franklin, right? Bills had a private workout with him. He's been mocked to the Bills, I think, the most of any other receiver, and also a fun guy to watch, right? Definitely a unique body build, just the long legs, and just when you watch him in the Pac-12 at Oregon, he's just blowing by everybody. It's really kind of hard to analyze any other skill sets because he blows by everybody every time. So,
Right.
But yeah, it seems like almost like a Jalen Hyatt type player where he just runs straight and fast and gets open that way and can make a living that way. I don't think he'd run a lot of routes. I don't think he'd be asked to do a lot of route running. I just don't think that's his skill set, right? But straight line speed, that deep threat on the edge, I think that's where he would live. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that, man. He's an outside receiver. He's explosive. I think that's the thing that, like, people put a lot of stock in the long speed, right? And I think that's hell. If you could do it, do it. But one of the things that like pops off to me, Troy Franklin is explosive. He's just explosive, man. And he's 6'2", 6'3", and can run. But if you can run 3 to 4 routes really, really well, hey, and I think that's what he does. He runs like 3 to 4 routes really, really well. And it's up to whoever drafts him. I wouldn't take him in the first round personally, but whoever drafts him, if you can develop him, you have something to work with here. You talk about a guy with speed and explosiveness. I really do like what he's able to do at the line of scrimmage in terms of his release and how he sets up DBs and stuff like that, and how he stacks DBs when he's downfield. I think those are great. Another thing is the production matches up what you see on tape in terms of the skill set. I mean, this is a guy.
He's the go-to guy, right?
Yeah, he's a go-to guy, and he knows it. And he didn't. There wasn't a game where I watched and he disappointed. Like, yeah, you wish that he could have been better against Washington when they faced off in December, right?
Right. And I'll say the Oregon scheme on offensively was a little bit funky, right? A lot of screen plays,
right?
Tons of screen plays, and then they take shots deep. I feel like if they had a more traditional offense, Troy Franklin might have had more production.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, how do you think the Bills would use him again? Kind of the second player we'd put in the Trent Sherfield role, right? And just
let's get Trent Sherfield out of our minds. So you're talking about a
gap
guy
of going from Trent Sherfield to Troy Franklin. Very intriguing to me.
No, I know what you mean.
But I don't think Troy Franklin could play the other types of positions, right? I don't think he's a slot receiver. If you want to, I don't think he's a Z, right? I think he is the Trent Sherfield role, just better at it.
Yeah. Well, I think, in Troy Franklin's career, I think he could play snaps in the slot a little bit just because of that speed that he has. But I mean, you're looking at a guy like this, like, man, if I can get him to deep overs and drag routes and stuff like that, like the drag route is a short intermediate route. Get him on stuff like that because we know, that he can. He does really good double move. People. Right, on a post, a double move, and he has the ability to track a ball and go up and get it too.
Yeah,
so that's how I envision him being used. I mean, you get him on something. I think he has a little wiggle to him as well. So a little run after the catch. But man, this guy in the open field, dude. Hey man, with that quickness, it's not always about long speed, but with that quickness, dude, I think he'd be lethal, man. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm all about the Bills, trading back if they can. It'd be nice. I mean, you got to have a partner and get the right compensation. But I look at it like this. If you look at, there's 4 wide receivers, right? We know the top 3 and Brian Thomas. Okay. But when I look at 5 through 12 or 5 through 16, because I feel like there's that many receivers. The value that you can get by trading back and getting another day 2 pick, because you don't have a 3rd round pick. So right now you only have 1 day 2 pick.
2 2s, 2 4s.
How much? Right. How if your goal is to get a wide receiver round or with your first pick and you trade back, like I just think there's a lot of value in this draft class. Like if it was up to me, I'd go defensive end round 1. You know, I'm looking at Chop Robinson. I know he doesn't have the production per se, but man, you look at the traits, the tools, like you're like, okay, I think we can work with this. But anyway, that's for another day.
That's a good point.
We can talk about that.
Roy says picking at 28, you're probably getting a guy with a second round grade anyways.
Right.
And that may be true in this draft, right? I think if some of these guys were in a different draft class, it could be a different story. But because there is so much depth at receiver, I think a lot of these guys will end up in the second round anyway. Because they have the same mentality. You could trade back and get a guy who's just, has to work on a few more things. Why not trade back and get good value instead of reaching? Right. That's the big question. And getting the Curtis Samuel signing, I don't think the need for receivers as big as it was, because I feel like it's already an upgrade from where they were last year, right? The goal was let's get better on offense. I think they already did that. Am I wrong on that?
I wouldn't say better yet.
Well, what are we talking here?
Well,
Hardy, Sherfield, and Gabe Davis. We have Kincaid, who's going to grow. I think Shakir would grow a little bit.
Okay, well, if you look at it that way, then yeah, for sure. But slightly better. Not like incrementally better, but a little bit better. Yeah, I could see that. I drool at the thought of Dalton Kincaid's year 2 and the development that he's gonna have.
He's a fun
that
player,
could be scary, you know. Khalil Shakir, like giving him the opportunities, not like, you know, this is the cool thing about the Khalil Shakir situation is that one, he works with Eric Mose in the offseason, you know, and he's a high football character guy, which I love. He no frills. He just wants to get the damn job done. I love that about him. But now you got a full offseason to download this offense, right? And to evolve as a slot receiver. Dude, like he could be special. Like, I don't know if we talk about like how good Khalil Shakir could be. I'm not saying he's going to be all pro level type of receiver, but man, if you
can hold down the position, right? That's really all we're looking for.
Can we get him to 60 receptions for 700 yards and 6 touchdowns? Like, that's what I want from Khalil Shakir.
Right.
That'd be
I'd
great.
say no, because you got to give half of those to Kincaid. It's almost like the running back conversation we've had the past few years. Like, can we give our running back more touches? No, because Josh has to take some of those, right? Or Josh takes all the rushing yards per game, team rushing yards. It's almost that same conversation.
I mean, it's in there, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Khalil Shakir can have 60 catches in this offense. You know, like
how many did he have last year? Do you know?
I'd have to take a look. Let's see.
I can look that up, but let's move on to the next receiver. I got a couple left here. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. This one's really interesting for me because really, like, going into looking at the draft receivers, who's available this year, I skipped over him a lot because I thought that he was more like the Cole Beasley type role, or, you know, Wes Welker or whoever you want to name, Cooper Kupp even. And I feel like we had that already with Kincaid, Shakir, so I kind of overlooked that early on. But I went back and watched, and I think he could play a lot more than I initially thought. He's not just that type of player. He's also a guy you saw win deep a lot at Georgia. But he is a smaller guy. But I think when you look at the football IQ we talked about, very high on that, right? I think he could do the option routes. He could read the defense as he's running them. But is there room for a guy like this on the roster is where the question lies for me.
Absolutely. Because, dude, Ladd McConkey is one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. He could, man, this white boy, if he cooking these dudes, to me, he's the best route runner in this class. There you go.
He's a great route runner, right?
He is a professional grade route runner right now. And he ain't a guy that you know that like is gonna win a lot of contested catches, but like what he does well, and he puts him in situations where he doesn't necessarily have to win by contested catches. He's just gonna be in the right place.
He'll get separation, right?
He's a separation. You think? I think he's Cole Beasley but like Cole Beasley wasn't this dope of a route runner coming out. I'm telling you, man, he goes to the right system. Lad is dope. He's dope,
That's
man.
dope.
He's
Where's he
dope.
fit into the Bills offense? Let's say they take him round one, a lot of mixed emotions, right? But how do you use a guy like this if you had him with to fit in with the current personnel?
Hold on, I gotta address something. John Roberts says you just said route running isn't everything. It's not everything, but what he does well, he does really well. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's how you win. So even though you may not be a great route runner, but if you're a guy that could take the top off of defense or you could pluck it out of the air, that's how you win, and that's good. You don't have to be like Bills fans getting this idea that they all have to be complete wide receivers. They all have to be Stephon Diggs type receivers, and you don't. You don't. The narrative coming into this offseason was, well, they need route runners. They need guys that can just get open. Like, yes and no. Like, there's other guys out. Anquan Bolden was not. He wasn't all that special, but he did things extremely well. Steve Smith, great route runner, right? But he wasn't like, he didn't have great speed. He just did his craft. So I look at Ladd McConkey the same way. What he does, how he wins is route running, and he does that better than anybody in his class.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm not going to get this quote right, but Kobe said you just need one or two really, really good moves to win. Right? If you have a nasty crossover that works every time, that's all you need, right? And I think that's what you're looking for at receivers. How do they win consistently? And it can be the same thing over and over again, but as long as it works, right? And I think Ladd McConkey, he wins with route running, right? And speed.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think he's a high IQ guy as well, right? If the linebacker's low, he'll go high. If the linebacker's high, he'll go low. Right. And we know the Bills are high on that too, right?
Yeah. So how he fits in this offense, he's a slot guy. He's a slot guy. But he plays well. I think he projects well to the slot, but he plays on the outside. Okay. He played on the outside a whole lot more on the outside than he played in the slot at Georgia. So but yeah,
if he transitioned to the NFL, he'd probably be looked at as a slot guy. Would you agree?
I don't think
the skill set I see.
I don't think so. Just because, he could do both. He could do both. But like, okay, so for the Bills, okay, like I like Ladd McConkey's ability to work outside more than I like Khalil Shakir's ability to work outside. So I would put McConkey on the outside and let Shakir keep the slot position. That's how I look at it.
Right. So now you have to dial it up where McConkey can win with route running. I don't think there's a lot of contested catch. I'm not sure if he'd win 50-50 balls. Nope. It's got to be speed and separation at that point.
Well, listen, like I think having a guy like McConkey, I think it opens up a lot for Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid, to stretch the field a little bit more. It opens up for guys like Samuel to get down the field. If you have a guy like that, look at what Cole Beasley in the slot, obviously, but because of his threat, we called it third and Cole because we already knew what was coming on third down. This dude's getting open, and Josh had an outlet. I think Ladd McConkey's that type of player, whether he's lined up on the outside, right, or he's on the inside. Dude, he in the SEC. This guy. I don't care who you're putting on him now. I think bigger DBs, they got their hands on him and stuff like that. Like, I think he had a harder time, but dude, he's cooking guys all the time. That guy is always open.
I can't find the comment. I know someone said it, but they brought up a good point. It's like if you get a guy like Ladd McConkey, the offense goes back to kind of the Brian Daboll days of all the receivers are interchangeable.
Right.
You can line them all up anywhere, right? We saw a lot of Diggs in the slot, Diggs on the outside. And you just mix them up that way. And I think that works. And the Bills have a lot of familiarity in that area.
Yeah.
So, why not go back to that if you get the opportunity to get a guy like Ladd McConkey at a good value? Is that 28?
So
I think you could take him at 28, right?
Yeah, he's one of the receivers that I have that has a first round grade. So he's the fifth receiver to me with a first round grade.
Okay. So you got top three, obviously, with Brian Thomas, And
Mm-hmm.
McConkey.
Lab
That's your
McConkey.
top five.
Those are my top 5.
Okay.
First round grades.
All right. Well, let's get into Keon Coleman because this is an interesting conversation. We talk about first round grades, second round grades. He's been both of them this year, I think, from a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Early in the draft process, he was the guy, right? He's going to be, in the conversation to go top 20. But I think the more you start watching the other receivers, he kind of fell down the board. And then obviously we get to the 40 time and stuff like that. And just really wasn't as productive as everyone hoped at Florida State. And their quarterback got injured, right? So that's some of it.
Yeah.
But again, what do you like about Keon Coleman? We'll start there.
Excellent ball skills. I mean, this dude, you talk about he's a guy like we talked about earlier in the show that can go up and get it. I think he's and I think he has pretty good athleticism. He's 6'4" and he plays like it. I like to think of his game like Mike Williams. He's a Mike Williams type of player. Is my comp for him. Yeah, I mean, you look at the production and
that's a good point. Yeah.
You wish it was better, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like games, Boston College, Virginia Tech come to mind. Like when they had to play like big teams, like good teams, Florida, even though they weren't, Miami, even though they weren't great, they weren't a great football team, but their secondary was so good. And I wanted more production. He had like 4 catches that game for under 30 yards. And I'm just like,
all contested.
Man, they're on
like
him.
Every
dude.
single play where he catches the ball, he's contested.
They're on him, and it's like I didn't see, like, even though he's a big play waiting to happen, like, okay, like the LSU game, put him on the map. I thought he was pretty good at Michigan State the year before. Okay.
Yeah, he was.
He was.
That's almost Michigan. Better tape to watch than the Florida State tape.
Yeah, he cooked Michigan, but like you turn on the LSU tape and he's like, this dude is killing these guys, right?
Yeah.
But you just don't see it consistently. I think one of the reasons why you got to go to route running. Like he's not a good route runner, right? But if you put
he's dangerous with the ball in his hands, would you agree with that? That's why
he's
doing punt returns.
Yep, he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. But if you put him in an offense with a Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, well, that need for that route runner you don't necessarily have to have, because now you just need a playmaker. You know what I'm saying? Like if Keon Coleman is your number 1 wide receiver, oof, because you need him to be very well-rounded. But Keon Coleman as your 3rd option in the Bills offense, 3rd, 4th option, oh, hell yeah, give me that.
He's a tool, especially in the red zone, right? That's a whole nother dynamic to the red zone.
A 6'4" receiver that plays like he's 6'4", hell yeah, give me that all day.
But something they haven't had in the red zone, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if we had a receiver you can throw a back shoulder to in the red zone, I mean, I don't think Josh has ever done that. Maybe Kelvin Benjamin. But when I look at Keon Coleman, though, I think Drake London, right? Big body, they run similar speeds, right? Drake London comes out, was he top 15?
I would say Keon Coleman's probably,
but Drake London's been productive.
I see it. Yeah, I see it.
He's been productive in the league,
Drake
right?
London, though,
quarterback play.
I wouldn't say Keon Coleman's Drake London, because Drake London, he's legit, bro. Like, Drake London's a dude, man.
Good. But when you look at its body, using your body to win contested situations, and they don't have the speed. So when you're looking at Keon Coleman, he's got to fit that Drake London mold for you, right?
Yeah.
You got to be able to do those types of things, right? Using your body to get open. You're going to take hits. But again, we know his hands are great. The guy can win contested situations against, in most scenarios, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that size and ball skills, I like it. I mean, I think it'd be really nice in the Bills offense. Keon Coleman's good, man.
Yeah, he's a hell of an athlete, and I think like 40 time. I don't think you improve on that though, right? And
Not much.
He's a young guy. He's going to get into an NFL team, and he is who he is when it comes to the speed, right? I don't think he's ever going to beat people deep like that. But again, he could definitely be a very productive NFL receiver that way. Though
he needs a lot of polish. I mean, I think he has like he takes bad extra steps in his routes. He needs a lot of work in terms of the way he runs routes. Because if you could put him in a situation where he can improve upon those things, man, you're going to get a really special guy. But
Right.
I think when you look at the production, and if you draft him to be your number one wide receiver, I don't know if I'd go that route. But if you go where there's a proven couple guys where he's not heavily relied upon, I think
Well,
go
let's start
Dallas
here.
would be great for him. Dallas Cowboys,
Well, are the
Brandon
Bills in a
Cooks,
position to roll
CeeDee
the dice?
Lamb.
Are you in a position to roll the dice this year at 28?
I'm not
'Cause
rolling the dice at 28 on Keon Coleman.
I mean, could be a really good player, maybe a
I
year
couldn't do
out,
it,
2
bro.
years out, but never gonna be a number 1, right?
You have to really, I mean, probably not, but I mean, you really would have to believe in that skill set. If this was like early 2000s, hell yeah. You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
like he's like Braylon Edwards.
Right. You got
But
Peyton
then
Manning back
nowadays,
there. Yeah.
if he's your number one wide receiver, right? But if he's your third, fourth guy, man, yeah,
Right.
Keon Coleman's
Right.
dope, but not in the first round.
Right. And I think what the Bills have been telling us, Brandon Beane in their press conferences, right? Sean McDermott in his press conference, they want explosiveness.
Yeah,
Don't think you necessarily get that from Keon Coleman, but he's definitely a fun player to talk about because it is an added element to the offense that they don't have, especially in
right.
the red zone.
Sure.
Right. So I like your trade back idea. If he's there, I love
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
All right, couple more here before we wrap it up. Xavier Worthy, 4.2 speed, new record holder for the 40-yard dash coming out of Texas. What would the Bills do with a guy like Xavier Worthy? I think he's a guy who can line up anywhere. We're back to that interchangeable conversation, right? He's
Yeah.
not like Marquise Goodwin, who's just a straight line speed track star, right?
Hmm.
I think he has a little bit of route running ability as well.
Yeah, man. He's you talk about a guy with the ball in his hands that can take us inside slant and go 70. That's him. A guy that you could throw a screen pass to, make a couple guys miss, and he's on the sideline going. That's this guy. He was obviously the number one receiver for Texas. I mean, he opened it up for a lot of
Yeah.
guys, right?
I
And
mean,
they threw to him a
right.
lot. You know, he's no Tyreek Hill.
No,
Like
he's not
Tyreek Hill,
physical that way. Did
right?
have a lot of drops, right? But they also did mention he broke his hand. He was playing through a broken hand, so
Right. But Tyreek Hill wasn't
couldn't
Tyreek
pass.
Hill coming out of college either. You see what I'm saying? So
There is
I think
yeah.
it,
I think there's only one Tyreek Hill ever.
right.
We're never gonna see another guy
But
who's 4.2 and could muscle you up, right?
if I had to bet on a guy because he ran such a good 40 to be productive in the NFL, I would say Xavier Worthy is not just going to be a fast guy who comes into the league and doesn't do shit.
What's
I
interesting
think
is John Ross, right? Tyquan
right.
Thornton as of late just haven't teams haven't found a way to use them effectively and make them reliable receivers. You
Yeah,
know,
I think he's the best route runner of those types of guys. Now, I think Henry Ruggs is a better route runner by far, and he didn't get an opportunity because he blew it. But
right? But who's the last speed guy that actually became one of the great receivers in the league?
oh, Waddle.
Right? Yeah, that's fair. Waddle turned out okay, but I mean, we talked about this with Jerry Jeudy, didn't really come to fruition, right?
Mhm.
You talked about Ruggs, that's different. But I think the speed examples are they're everywhere of just straight speed guys who don't work out.
Yeah, yeah. And he's one of those guys, man, that he's good, man. He's good. And you look at the production, like in the 3 years that he's been at Texas, he's had the production. He's had it. Like, so, you see it's something that you see throughout his tape, like, I mean, the Bills would use him. I mean, he unlocks a lot of stuff because just the fact that how fast he is and he's a valid deep threat. He's also going to be your punt returner too, or your kick returner. I think he could do that as well. So, man,
Both of
I
them
like
can.
Xavier Worthy, but I'm not pick. I personally,
We're
for the
trading back at this point. I think we're in round 2 right
I
now.
think I think some teams are going to value him in the first round.
Well, yeah, you look at like the Colts, right? Big arm quarterback. You need something outside of Michael Pittman.
Mm-hmm.
This is the type of guy you want. When you have
Yeah.
a big arm quarterback, that's what you're looking for. in my
Yeah.
opinion, right? I mean, the Bills are a little different. Their offense is a little different. It's not necessarily straight line. It's more like route running based, a lot of RPO, things like that. But I think a team like the Colts would like Xavier Worthy. They would
Yeah.
take a look at that.
Yeah. One of my favorite games of Xavier Worthy was a TCU game. I felt like that was a like his most complete game because it wasn't just predicated on deep passes. Like you
He
saw
took a
like
screenplay. I think I remember.
yeah, man, he
Yeah,
just
one of his
he played a
screenplays
really
went
good
for.
game, and you see the consistency at least, right? So like I always try to like, okay, I know he's fast, but like from snap to snap, like what's the consistency look like? What's the effort look like? And he it looks the part. It really
Yeah,
looks the part.
yeah, yeah. He's the process guy that they're gonna love, right?
Yeah.
That's been
Yeah.
coming out of that's been out there in the draft analyst world. That he is a high character guy as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I like him, man. What's funny about him is I've been familiar with Xavier Worthy for quite some time just because like he committed to Michigan. I'm a big Michigan fan, and it didn't work out. He ended up going to Texas, but man, like, I was one of those
They don't
guys
throw the
like
ball anyway. That's
I
why.
know. Hey, but national champions though, okay?
Yeah.
Watch your
Hey,
mouth
just
there,
do what
buddy.
works, right? Do what
Not
works.
why right. So, but watching his huddle film, like he was amazing in high school. This dude, I mean, that speed is just unreal. So it was nice to see something like that translate to college, and then it worked out in college, and now he's going to the league. So I think he's a guy that you're gonna see him. He's a name, and I think he's gonna have a really good, solid career.
Yeah, fair. And I think he's got to go to the right situation, right? I think that's important as well. Offensive head coach, somebody who can actually
Mhm.
use his skill set and find ways to get him the ball. So he's just not getting beat at the line all the time, right?
Yeah.
All right, two more, then we'll hop out of here. Xavier Legette, and then I have Tez Walker. Touch on them just a
Xavier
little bit.
Leggett. Xavier
Legette's he's
Leggett.
interesting because he's a big receiver, almost like a Debo Samuel size, but also the 4.3 speed to go with that. That's a rare thing to have if you're a receiver.
Man,
Both of those.
he's scary. That when he gets in the open field, bro, he is scary, dude. Now, the knock on him is his age, so he's a little older prospect. But man, what I love about him, and it's so corny, dude, he's such a country boy. Like I love that. Like he's so Randy Moss to me in terms of his like character and like just the way he's like just no frills. I'm a country boy. I like to fish and hunt and play football. And he, he's just gonna go out there. He's gonna run your ass over because he's just he kind of reminds me of like what people thought about Sammy Watkins. The thing about Sammy Watkins was he was coming out. He's this guy that, but he runs it like he catches the ball. He's like a running back. Xavier Leggett is that way too, but also he's a good route runner. He's impressive, man. Like I had him. He's my sixth graded wide receiver in this class. Like I had him like almost super close to giving him a first round grade. I
Yeah.
really, really, really love his game, man. He's a
Well, you like
guy.
they played a pro style offense too at South
Yeah.
Carolina, right? You like
Uh-huh.
that added value.
I would be okay with the Bills taking him at 28.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You talk about a height, weight, speed guy. I'm not gonna say that he's AJ Brown.
Well, he's
Okay.
also gadgets too, right? You can do the sweeps with him.
You could do a lot with him.
You can do a lot of screenplays with him.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like there for sure, and it
He's
is something
solid.
they don't have at this point.
He's good. Xavier Leggett is good. I would love to have him. I'd love to have him for the Bills, man. He's one of my favorite wide receivers, dude.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we were talking free agency, and this doesn't matter anymore. But I was high on Laviska Shenault for the Bills, not to be the axe
I remember
or
those
anything like
conversations.
that, but really just a guy you could use as a gadget player who maybe could do some kick returns here and there, but like you could bring him in on special packages and just kind of make it easy for Josh and maybe get some yards after catch, right? That'd be nice. Bills don't have a lot of yards after catch, but I think Legette's in that same type of conversation where you could do those type of gadget plays make it easier for Josh, right? And get some yards, focus on yards after catch. But he also, I think, could win with straight line speed in certain scenarios. You see it all the time in his film, right? Catching the ball deep, and just because he just burned the cornerback with just straight line speed, right? I think that's just rare.
Yeah,
Just rare to have a
yeah.
guy like that.
And I think people, knock his lack of production. And I understand like the concerns there, but like sometimes it takes a little bit for the light to come
Yeah.
on. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this year, I mean, you can't knock him. Man, it came on this year. And
Right.
I don't,
Yeah, not a lot of starting experience, right, with him.
yeah. And Spencer Rattler, like he's a polarizing quarterback and not that great, if you ask me, in my personal opinion of him. So I think he could have had more consistent quarterback play. I think that would have helped him. But man, like what I saw on tape this year is why I have him like knocking on the door of a first round grade. And I try not to, when you watch film and you grade these prospects, man, because you like them, you have to be stingy with your first round grades, and I just like his game. I think for the Bills, he gives the Bills that nasty persona too. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know
He's
if you
gonna hit
guys think,
somebody, right?
yeah, like we got a bunch of finesse dudes out there, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. But he's a guy like, dude, I'm afraid of him when he gets the ball in his hands.
He's
You know
gonna
what I'm
get
saying?
injured, you're saying.
The guy looks like he pushes tractors for a living. Like the dude is just he's a
Yeah,
specimen.
sign
Dude.
me up. I love
Yeah,
pushing tractors.
yeah, dude. I like him a lot, bro.
All right, what quick thoughts on Tez Walker? Another guy, kind of came on late, right? I think there was a lot more expectation for him, but didn't play. I think he only played like 3/4 of the season, something like that. But again, you can see the talent with this guy. He's tall, lengthy, does have the speed to go with that, right? I think he was a 4.3 guy as well. But really, what I like about him is he works the sideline, right?
Mm-hmm.
That pops out. He's always aware of where the out of bounds line is, and he plays tight to that. I think there's a lot to like, but again, 0 route tree, right? Not quite 0, but just a guy. He's straight line speed only, but that tall, lengthiness. I think this guy could be maybe a steal late second, something like that. Who could maybe turn into something, right? Maybe turn into a player like Troy Franklin. But you get him at a discount. What do you think about Tez
Yeah,
Walker?
yeah. So he's a transfer from Kent State. Okay, at Kent. So what I would tell people is this: like when you look at him, make sure you go look at the Kent State tape too, because I think that gives you the most complete like evaluation of him. So this year he had a suspension where he missed 4 games. Okay, now I have I say he's a day 3 guy, so he's like a 4th round prospect to me, and mainly because, well, like you mentioned, the route running, but his hands, bro, he has inconsistent hands, and that to me it's worrisome, right? It's worrisome to me, but the guy, I mean, he's got some quickness, like he's got some good speed, like he's not the biggest receiver. I think he's like 6 foot 6'1". But he's a playmaker. He's one of those guys that like, in the right situation, right offense, I think he could be really good. I would like to hedge my bets on his development. Like you put him, so like for the Bills, let's say he comes to the Bills. Let's say the Bills take
Take him in the 3rd.
Xavier Worthy.
Good.
Let's say they take, well, we don't have a 3rd round pick. So let's say we take Xavier Worthy with our 1st round pick, and in the 4th round we get him. I would fall in love with this pick just because, like, okay, now your cupboard is full with good wide receiver talent, right? But now you get to be around guys like Stephon Diggs that can show you some of the nuances of being a pro. Make sure he gets on that jugs machine. And maybe sometimes I felt like the moment is too big for him, but like because they depended on him so much in that offense, I feel like it got to him a little bit, right? So I felt like
Right.
he has much better tape the year before at Kent State, in my opinion. Okay, because you kind of get to see the full arsenal of the player, like with all the distractions and all that stuff. And
Right.
he almost had 1,000 yards and he had 11 touchdowns. So this year, I think it's a step up in competition, but I think he answered the call. I think if he can work on his concentration in terms of how when he's catching the ball at the catch point, oh man, this guy will
Yeah.
probably a second round talent. But because his hands are so inconsistent, that's why I have him at as a
Right.
fourth round grade.
And that's a good point because we talked about Keon Coleman. You really can't improve your 40 time or your burst, right? That's
Mhm.
extremely difficult to do. But I feel like something like concentration drops or something like that can be improved,
Yeah.
right?
So you look at and we talked about earlier, Miami. Okay, so this is a team. North Carolina plays Miami, and he put up like 130 yards against them. Showed a really good game. Now that was his second game back. So teams that that had good cornerbacks. I think Clemson. It wasn't. I think he had like 4 catches for 75 yards or 70 yards, something like that. I thought he looked well in that game. Now Virginia, he smoked them, but they're trash. There's nothing to write home
Right.
about.
Right. And they win
Um,
like 2 or 3 games, something like that.
yeah, the Duke tape was really good. I felt like he was eating. That was probably his best game of the season, but statistically, I felt like the best game on tape was the Miami game.
Yeah, it helps when you got a quarterback like Drake May, who had a down year. Really, that whole team had a down year. They were a lot better in 2022.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, just having a quarterback that can air it out like that, I think does show you, you know, what kind of athlete Tez Walker is, right? Going to get the
yeah,
ball, getting separation against the corners. I mean, I feel like there's some offenses they don't get asked to do that a lot, so it's kind of
right.
hard to evaluate. But we know he can get open. Again, for a
Yeah,
3 guy, like I said earlier, work the sideline. A lot to like there, but again, you're going to want a player like this at a discount because the future's uncertain, right? We don't even know if
yeah,
this guy can get on the field, but
right.
you'd probably use him in speed situations, like back to Trent Sherfield. Someone's got to fill that role. I think Tez Walker would be that, but I don't think he'd be on the field a lot. Just be certain packages. You're trying to win deep.
Yeah, but I like the player though. I think man, the right situation. If he could develop, man, he could be good.
All right, last topic for the night. Who would we miss? Who? Give me one guy that you love that should be on this list and be in consideration for the Bills. You think would be a good fit, but maybe we didn't get to because this class is deep as hell.
I'm gonna go with the receiver and call me a homer, but I'm gonna say Roman Wilson. Um,
Ah, someone did bring him up earlier in the comments.
oh, did they? Okay, yeah. Roman
Let's
Wilson's
find it.
another is a guy that is 4.3 speed, but you talk about a pro's pro. He's that guy, and I think he gets overshadowed because Michigan is not a team that throws the ball around the
They don't
yard.
throw the ball. Yeah,
But man, I've watched this kid for years, and he just gets better and better. And when you talk about route running, he's a really good route runner. He's a good route runner, and he has speed, right? So he to me is very similar to Khalil Shakir, but he's more athletic.
Now, you think he's a first round guy? Do you think there's any way he sneaks into the first round? Because I've seen him early second. I've yet to see him in the late first round in any
In my
ranking.
opinion, he's a day 2 guy. I think he goes round 3. He's a day 2 guy though. Ricky Pearsall, that white boy can. I like his game too, dog.
Yeah, and he's
Dude,
primarily out of the slot too, right?
but Florida is so trash. They are hot garbage, and they let this guy waste away. This dude had one of the most insane catches, bro, this season. Like he jumped over a guy and just, bro. Ricky Pearsall, the contested catch and the spectacular catchability of this dude is something special. He's wild, bro. To me, he's a really athletic guy. I think he can make a team pretty happy. I'm not saying he's gonna be anything special. I mean, I guess it depends on who he goes to, but I
Right.
like this film too.
Well,
He
I
just
think
played
it
with the
changes
bad quarterbacks.
if he goes to a team like the Rams. It's like, oh yeah, he'll be a star. You know what
Exactly.
I mean? Like you get the right fit, it really makes a big difference if they know how to
Yeah.
use your skill set to the the maximum that matters. All right, so I was going to bring up a name, and I'm forgetting it right now. Oh, Javon Baker. I wanted to ask you about him before we get out of here because he's one of my crush guys, right? Like you watch his film, he just got the dog, right? And you love to watch it, but I just don't see how it translates to the Bills or even. I mean, I think he'll have a role in the NFL, but I don't think he'll ever be anything big, right? What's your thoughts on Javon Baker, real quick? How do you see?
I like Javon Baker's game, man. He's one of those guys. He plays his ass. Like he plays so hard, bro. He's got really good hands too. I don't think he gets enough credit for it. I think playing at UCF with average quarterbacks, the numbers that he puts up is good. Like they depended on him to do a lot. And I think he's an underrated route runner. I think he has very strong hands at the catch point, which I really appreciate. I think he's a guy that can win in the short area of the field. And I love his body control toward the sideline. I think he's a good receiver, man. He's in the same category to me as Ricky Pearsall. Like it depends on who and where they go to. I don't think these are guys like Javon Baker, Ricky Pearsall. I think they go day 3 to me. I think I have both of them inside the top 20 wide receivers in this class toward the end, but I think they're pretty solid quality guys. And you know what? To be honest, probably one or if not both of these guys gets drafted in the 5th round. I think that's the sweet spot for those two, 5th round.
Yeah, that would be great value. Again, it's hard for me to see the Bills getting him on the field. How are you going to use him? Again, it's not an every play guy, right?
Right.
Love to see it, but I mean, he feels like he could bring a spark to the offense, right? When I watch that, that's kind of the vibes I get. But anyway, anyone you want to add before we get out of here?
Doesn't it feel like he's one of those guys that but back on him though, he's one of those guys is like you see him and then it's like you look back 2 years, like, damn, I wish that my team would have drafted him because look at what he's developed into. That's what I feel about him. You know what I'm saying?
Full circle, because I think a lot of teams and a lot of fans look back at Gabe Davis and say, why the hell didn't my team take him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This guy had 4 touchdowns against the Kansas City games, like the most watched game of all time, right? And he had 4 touchdowns in it. And this guy's a 4th round pick out of UCF. Like I think everyone saw that, right? So,
yeah.
And that's why the draft process is hard, because there is emotions, right? I prefer this type of player for my team, and the GMs absolutely have that as well. And you're going to argue for that, right? Because you feel more comfortable about it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the player is going to turn out good. And that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
To ignore the noise
Absolutely.
and just take the player who's actually going to be good in the NFL.
Right.
And you never know how, money changes people, popularity changes people. You just never know, right? And that's why this process is so fun.
And that's why Buffalo is a great city, man. If you're a football player that wants to come in and work, like there's not much to do outside of football, right? Like you come in and you become the best version of yourself, is what they say. And so, I appreciate that about the Bills, man. It's just fun, dude. It's fun.
Yeah. Minimal distractions. It's just football and hanging out with the guys. So anyway, that's all we got. Thanks for tuning in with us. Be sure to tune in with us next week, 7:30 Eastern on Thursday. We're going to do cornerbacks and safeties. Sterling, absolutely welcome to join us for that. Good talking with you again, man. It's been a while. So
yeah, dude, I'll be in Vegas. I'll be in Vegas next week because my birthday is next week. So
they got internet in Vegas.
They do, but I'll be too drunk. So if you want to have me on the following week, let me know, man. I'll definitely let me know what you're working on, and I'll definitely be ready for it.
Sounds good. Like we said, we do have a 7-part series once a week called Roster Rescue. We're going to make the case for every position around the Bills roster. Yes, it does include punter, kicker, quarterback, and tight end, but that's all in one show, right? Try to make one, group them together. So that'll be interesting. But thanks for tuning in.